Hello everyone, how are you today?
Good, thanks, Vicky. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Have you had a busy week last week?
Not really. It's been on and off.
And how are you both going with the assessment task?
I have just finished all my enrollment and everything, and there was a little confusion. So I've been on going through it since the past couple of days and starting it. I think it's yeah, able to do it. But if I do have any questions, I'll ping in with an email.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, do
Thank
that.
you. Yeah.
Hopefully it's fairly straightforward. We've tried to give you as much information as we can in that folder. So, all right, looks like it's just us. So I might go ahead and share my screen. I don't think it will take 2 hours with just two people here because there will be less chatting, I think. As usual, if you want to tell me a little story about things that you've encountered, please just call out and we will make some time for that. All right, so this week we're looking at emotions and confidence and that sort of thing. And for the tutorial, I've just got two sort of small vignettes, I guess, short case studies that we're going to look at. And these are the learning outcomes for the whole module. So we're looking at social and emotional development and social and emotional, how that affects learning and a little bit of well-being. And we're going to apply selected theories to common classroom situations. So we've got a couple of new theorists this week. We've got Erickson and Bandura, and we're also revisiting Vygotsky. So again, it's not the goal to memorize all the different stages of these theories. It's more about trying to apply the theories to the things that we see in the classroom. All right, so we'll start with a Menti. And that's in the chat now. All right, and there's the number if you prefer to do it on your phone. You can think about the theories more broadly when you answer this, or you can think about the particular ones from this week. All right, feeling fairly confident. That's great. That's great to see. All right. Well, this one, describe one behavior that you've seen. It could be in yourself, or it could be in students in your class or in your, classmates from the subjects that you're studying at uni. where you think either they've been really confident about their learning or they've really not been confident. So what sort of things would we see, would we notice in their behaviour? Could be things like, putting their hand up to ask a question because they're feeling confident that they know the answer. Could be something like asking for help, more help, or, avoiding eye contact if they're feeling really nervous about joining in. Maybe you've been in group work where people, either feel really confident to answer something or really not confident about participating in the group. All right, we've got one response there. Let's have a look. Joined in the discussion, yes. That's always good when you can get people to join in the discussion. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the three theories that I've sort of got for this week, which are Erickson, Bandura, and Vygotsky, and look at the different ways that we might explain why the learners are behaving this way and what teachers can do in response to that. So yeah, yes, waiting for others. Yep, hesitating. Yep. Those are all good things that we've noticed in the classroom. All right, so our first case study is Amir, and Amir is 10 years old and he's very focused on getting things exactly right. He'll erase and rewrite until time runs out, and he often says he'll do it himself. He doesn't want any help. His teacher has noticed that his family values neatness and achievement, which might be influencing how he approaches his schoolwork. So Amir isn't disengaged, he's working very hard, but his anxiety about mistakes is actually getting in the way of learning. So we're going to look at some possible ways to support Amir and decide which might be helpful. And as you think about your answers, consider what's really behind Amir's behavior. So what kinds of emotions or beliefs might be driving it? And what kinds of support would you give him to help him take safe risks without feeling like he's failed? So we're going to start with 5 options on the next slide, and I want you to rank them from most helpful to least helpful. For anyone that's come in late, I will put the link in the chat again. Let's have a look. Oh, that's really interesting. Pair Amir with a knowledgeable other. You've got right down the bottom. Okay, so we do want to do things like normalize mistakes as part of learning. That's really important. And obviously private check-ins would help reduce public anxiety. Reduced task difficulty might not be something we want to do straight up. So can anyone give me some reasons why we might want to not reduce task difficulty? If we think about Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, we don't want the task to be too easy because kids will get bored with that. Adults will get bored with that if the task is too easy, you're trying to learn. So you need to have enough challenge in there that it's going to build genuine confidence when you get it right. So if it's too easy, you're just going to go, well, that was just too easy. So confidence grows through supported struggle, not through avoidance. So I would have put that one right down the bottom. Does anyone want to speak about why they put the pair Amir with a knowledgeable other low? What are you thinking the disadvantage? You can just type it in if you like. What are you thinking the disadvantages of pairing Amir with a knowledgeable other might be?
Well, I think, can I just say it instead of typing?
Yeah. You
Um,
sure can. I just put that option there because people sometimes scared to have it say, which is fine.
I don't know. For me, the reason was because I thought, because from the paragraph that I already saw, Amir already has the anxiety of like trying to prove that he can do it well, and his
Mm-hmm.
tasks well, because his parents are like follow perfection and like neatness and stuff. And so I felt like, what if the other person that he's paired with was already like that or is already like that? Then that just might pressurize him more, um in terms of him wanting to be that perfectionist, which
Yep.
is just
Yep.
getting worse for him instead of getting better.
Yep. And that's a really important thing. And so it's good that you said that. Okay, because I want to dive into that a little bit more. So if we have a look at it through our 3 theories that we're focusing on this week, we've got Erickson, who's got the stages, okay, and at this age, he's going to be in that sort of industry versus inferiority stage of emotional development. So he's going to develop competence through confidence through effort, okay? And his success is going to build the confidence. So mistakes should feel safe and not shameful. And that's what you need to take into consideration when you're pairing them with a more knowledgeable. Choose to be the more knowledgeable other is important. And that's a really good point that you've made there. So feedback that values effort and persistence over perfection is important. And you have to encourage mistakes. You know, it's okay to make a mistake and just let that one go and move on. And I know that would be really hard for a perfectionist. So I'm not suggesting that would be easy. So with Vygotsky, we're learning in that social interaction and guide support in the zone of proximal development. And the scaffolding is going to help the learner take safe risks and manage uncertainties. So the scaffolding could be more about the risk taking and the uncertainty than the actual task, the difficulty of the task, because maybe the task isn't actually that difficult for Amir. Maybe it's just that he needs to be neat and tidy and you know, he's actually quite good at the task. So reducing the task difficulty wouldn't help at all. So we would have to give him a knowledgeable other that can model good enough and let's move on. Okay, so that he can work on that gradual improvement rather than I must get it perfectly right the very first time I try to do it. So within his zone of proximal development, we need to get him to work more with tolerating imperfection. And Bandura his theory is about learning vicariously. So some of it is his theory is has quite a lot of depth to it. But what we're focusing on here is modeling and vicarious learning. So we can see a peer who thinks it's good enough and manages still to get a good mark. And we can go, okay, well, I can do that. I'm like that peer. I can do that. So it's better for a peer to model that kind of thing than a teacher. Still important for the teacher to do it. But if the student doesn't identify with the teacher because they're, older and have a lot more knowledge, they will identify more closely to a peer who has approximately the same capabilities as them. Then they can see that the peer recovers from the mistake and it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. So it's good for both adults and peers to be modeling imperfection. So when you're standing up doing modeling and you're doing a think aloud, you might sort of think to yourself, you point out things like, I see this problem and I think this, or maybe that's not quite right. I need to think this way. So you don't just think it through all correctly every time. You've got to sort of point out to the kids where they might make a mistake and where they can recover from that. And then, they can see that learners make mistakes and keep going. So I put this extra slide in about what a peer, more knowledgeable other can do. So you don't want your peer, more knowledgeable other to be a mini teacher. They're not a mini teacher, okay? They don't need to do the job for us. What the teacher is looking for is a peer who already behaves differently from the person they want to match them up with. So someone who naturally works with a lighter touch or takes small risks and moves on when something isn't perfect. So that kind of modeling is powerful because it's socially authentic. So Amir can watch another student make a small mistake, fix it, stay relaxed, and that will send a much stronger message than if the teacher just talks to them alone or, the teacher talk at the front of the room. So we don't need these peer, more knowledgeable others to instruct or correct. They don't need to do that. That's not part of their job. We don't want them to be mini teachers. They just need to be the type of person that models comfort and persistence in their normal work. So when Amir sees that kind of approach being valued in the classroom, so you make a particular effort to praise the more knowledgeable other, it will help him to internalize the idea that progress matters more than perfection. Has anyone come across anything like that in their placements or anywhere else? In groups that you've worked in, perhaps? Does that make anyone think they would put more knowledgeable other higher on the list than you did previously?
Yes, I think I've come across that. So when I teach grade 5 children, there is a student um, over there who is really intelligent. And when I do the same task with the whole class, she is like, "This is too easy for me. Please give me a different topic than the rest of the class." So yes, I've seen this behavior.
Yep, that's a great example. Anyone else got anything? No? Okay, then I have a second case study, and I fear this is going to be a really short tutorial. So our second learner is Sion. Sion is 15. He's social, capable, and confident, but his effort depends heavily on the people around him. When his friends are focused, he's focused, and when they're not, he loses interest. Outside of school, he's also shaped by social influence, following online role models like gamers and athletes. So Sion's challenge isn't ability or even motivation, it's direction. His energy is social, it moves with the groups. So for teachers, the question becomes, how can we redirect the social energy towards learning rather than distraction? So let's start by thinking about what actually drives Sion's motivation and what influences are shaping the choices he makes. So what do you think about Sion's motivation? What's motivating Sion? So a couple of words that you think might capture him most, things like, I don't know, peers, belonging, recognition maybe. Do you think social media would be important, or do you think he cares about teacher feedback? What stands out to you, do you think? All right, so he's more interested in his peers, attention from his peers rather than the teacher. So how, just in the chat now, how might we redirect some of that social energy into classroom, positive classroom behaviour and engagement? How can we use the peers?
Oh, I didn't answer the question. How can we use a peers to motivate Sion?
Yep. So we might be able to do things like peer mentoring. Maybe Sion could mentor some people. Or maybe we could do some group work where we give them group roles with a purpose. Yeah, put him in pairs for peer work. So this might be the time where we're going to, do some group work and have some collaborative challenges. So let's have a look at our three theorists. So Erickson, this is an older student, so he is more in the identity versus role confusion timeline of Erickson's progression. So he is still developing a stable sense of self and belonging. So belonging can be a really important thing for adolescents because belonging supports identity. And so students need to feel like they fit in. So if you can do some inclusive activities that connect personal interests and culture to classwork, so you try to pick things that are culturally relevant at the time. So maybe the types of sporting identities and no, it's much harder now because everybody's looking at different things. So watching different sports and different movies and different shows. When I was younger, it was much easier for teachers to tap into that because we all watched the same TV shows at the same time each week and all of that sort of thing, the same kinds of sport, the football season or the cricket season or whatever at the same time. It makes it a little bit harder now. I've seen online some teachers really leaning into different memes so that the current middle grade 6, 7 thing that's going on. I've seen various reactions from teachers, and you can tell me if it's something that's actually happening in classrooms over here in Australia. But I've seen some teachers have signs up in their room that if they hear 6, 7, you get detention and you have to write a big essay. Whereas I've heard other ones get them to incorporate the whole 6, 7 thing into whatever lesson they're doing. So for music teachers, they had to come up with, a rap or something like that that had 6, 7 in it. And the kids really, really got into it, So sometimes if you can tune into what the kids are tuned into, it can be really helpful. When I was teaching, it was, what was that? There was a show on television that all the kids were watching. I can't even remember it now. But there was a little scientist in the show, and because I was teaching science, I tried to tune into the little scientist from that show. Anyway, if we move on to Vygotsky, we're learning through the social interactions and collaborations. So group work is really important, getting people to say things out loud and hearing other people say them out loud can help to clarify and build understanding, and it's going to help shape thinking and engagement. So this is a time where you might use cooperative tasks where motivated peers can lift group energy and provide structure. So for some groups, some age groups, having definite roles within the group is a really good way to do that. And he will learn how collaboration and dialogue help him stay focused and engaged. And then you've got Bandura with his learning through observation and modeling and self-efficacy. So that's another really key area of Bandura's theory is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that you can do it. And you'll have different levels of self-efficacy in different contexts. So you might be really confident that you can ride a bike, for example, but not very confident that you could ride a horse. So self-efficacy is not all-encompassing, it's contextual. So if Sion is watching respected peers succeed in class, that might boost his personal beliefs in his ability. And so things like positive peer role models and teachers modeling enthusiasm and persistence. And that will help him to learn that effort and engagement are valued behaviours that he might like to copy. All right, so this is like an opinion thing. Which do you think matters more? So it's kind of between belonging and autonomy and feedback and challenge. So which order would you put those in? This will probably depend a little bit on what area you're teaching and what stage of development your learners are in. Yep, that's good. So I'm seeing belonging is very important. Having enough challenge is important. Giving feedback is also important. You want to be able to encourage the students, so you need to be able to give them feedback. And autonomy is totally going to depend on the age of the students that you're teaching. So autonomy for adolescents becomes really vital because they're building identity, they're making decisions, they're testing boundaries every which way. But for younger students, autonomy is less of a factor. But we definitely need to have a mix of all of these things. I've got a little table here to sort of look at the differences between the different learning groups. So for those of you who are doing early childhood, there's a key focus on building trust and security and connections. So we tend to do that through play and relationships. And the teaching emphasis is on strong relationships and emotional safety, predictable routines. So the most relevant theory for that group is Erikson's trust and autonomy. We're going to be using guided interactions through Vygotsky's theory, and we're going to be modeling behavior. So we'll be modeling the behavior we want the children to internalize. So very much heavy on belonging and not as much on being autonomous. In primary school, the learners are developing competence through confidence and confidence through guided success. So we're scaffolding a lot in primary school. So we're scaffolding learning, we're celebrating effort, and we're, encouraging peer collaboration. Theory-wise, we are mostly in that industry and confidence stage, and we're using a lot of scaffolding and mastery. We want students to master the things that we're teaching them. And Bandura, we're modeling strategies and effort, and we need the positive role models from students in the class as well. So it's not just about the teacher modeling everything, although that is very important, but we need students that are modeling the things that we want internalized as well. And then in secondary, the students are forming their identity. So they are moving towards being autonomous. They still need to feel like they belong, but their level of autonomy is increasing. They're making their own decisions, and they have to, deal with the consequences of those decisions. So you want to encourage independent thinking, voice and choice, and a positive peer culture. Erikson's stage is identity versus belonging, and Vygotsky will do a lot of peer learning and dialogue. And for Bandura, self-efficacy is becoming really important. And overall, the balance of belonging and autonomy is that they are shifting towards autonomy now. They're they're just a couple of years away from graduating from high school and going off and being autonomous people who live their own life. We have to keep in mind that students learn a lot from things that are not said as well as things that are said. So the way that we behave, the way that we manage our own emotions and frustrations, the things that we model explicitly in class. A lot of teaching is moving back to explicit teaching. And for my research, I was doing a lot of modeling in learning how to learn. I wanted the students that I taught to learn how to learn. Yes, guided interactions can be modeling, and we'll talk more about that in the next 3 weeks. So the next 3 weeks are more about the learning theories and less about the developmental theories. So we'll talk about how if we model all the things in a guided interaction, then as they are internalized by the student, you can let go of that scaffolding and modeling, and the student should be able to do it on their own. So then you can do, as long as they have the base knowledge, you can do more independent work because they know how to do it. You've modeled it already. Yes, attitude towards mistakes is really important. And I know that I've talked about retrieval practice a lot, but I feel like retrieval practice is a good learning strategy where you can model a positive attitude towards mistakes. Yes, those are all good things, all good things. And these are all part of Bandura's social learning theory. So modeling and, you know, vicarious learning are all parts of Bandura's social learning theory. So our own behavior models how to approach challenge, how to treat other people, how to recover from errors. And it's a reminder that we don't just teach content. We teach how to learn. We teach how to respond appropriately in society. We teach all sorts of things. So the way we respond to students and to mistakes and to pressures sets the emotional tone for the whole class. So a good thing to model is reflection. So reflect on the behavior. Also effort, kindness, all of those are things that teachers are modeling every day sometimes without even knowing that you're doing it. All right, so just to check in at the end here, our major theories for this week are Erickson, Vygotsky, and Bandura, and each sheds light on learners' confidence, motivation, and belonging, and how these theories can translate into everyday classrooms. So we saw that Erickson reminds us that students need to feel capable and that mistakes are part of growth. Vygotsky shows us how learning happens with others through scaffolding, guidance, social interaction. And Bandura explains how seeing other people succeed can actually build your own belief and self-efficacy, especially if the other person is someone that you feel comparable to. Okay, so sometimes you see people succeed and you go, oh, I could never do that because I'm not like that person. I have this or that and they have blah, blah, blah. So it helps when the people are similar to you. It helps to believe that you can do it. So again, these theories are not competing ideas. They all connect, and we combine belonging and modeling and support to create classrooms where students feel free to take risks and recover from mistakes and to keep learning. All right, that's all I've got because I was hoping that everyone would talk a lot more this week now that we've sort of gotten to know each other a bit. I'm just going to stop sharing. But this Monday group is a very small group compared to the others. Does anyone have any specific questions or any concerns
Not
about?
quite, but I might send you an email with the assignment stuff just to double check before I submit, Just want to be that like I put down correct points and not something that's out of the list or something. I also have sent you
Yeah,
an email last week regarding saying like I send you an sample of my assignment, Vicky, and all.
I can't look at samples of assignments because I've got 750 students or something like that. So it's not possible for me to read drafts. So it would be best to get peers to have a look at your drafts or to use Grammarly to make sure that everything is going okay with your draft. Because it's just not possible for me to look at 750 drafts. I'm really sorry about that, but I just can't fit it in.
Okay, all good.
KLA for early childhood. I don't know what that acronym stands for. What's that acronym? For primary school and early childhood, the KLAs are just everything. So for yes, I would do that. I've just Googled it. Early years learning framework work. That is the one that you're working with. So you just have to, when we say things like, choose a KLA, we just want you to pick a context, because context is really important for some of the strategies that you might decide to use. So, you might do something different in science than you would in English. And that's really the only reason we say to say what your context is. So we could probably take KLA out of that and just say describe your classroom context. Does that help at all, Oscar? Do we need to define generalized anxiety? Let me have a look at it. Let me have a look at the question. I am actually new to this subject, but I do have markers who've marked before, so they will know what to do. I'll give you my best guess looking at the question. All right, I've got it here. Item 4 is reflect on student well-being. What is well-being? Why is it important? What sort of things affect it? And what are the important well-being risk factors? So that's more generalized than just generalized anxiety. Oh, sorry, I am reading the wrong one. Okay, how might scaffolding for the use of Vygotsky's ZPD need to be differentiated for a student who experienced generalized anxiety? I would describe what generalized anxiety is, and I think that the example that I gave you today is a good way to look at how you would use Vygotsky's ZPD. That's why I put that one in there this week, because I had to really sit down and think about how I would use ZPD and what the MKO would do in that sort of situation. So yes, describe what it is, explain what it is, define it, and then do the sorts of things that I modeled today. Okay, so you pick a peer who is a bit more laid back, not too laid back, because your person is not going to identify with someone who's the class clown. Okay, so you have to match your MKO with your learner. Okay, so you want to pick someone who's relatively confident compared to the student you're trying to assist, and someone who's going to be able to sort of brush things off a bit more easily. Okay, so not someone who's so different that they're not going to identify with them, though. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that was useful for number 4. That was a bit of a new way for me to look at CPD as well and really think about how it could be helpful. All right, well, if you don't have any other questions, I'm going to let you go because I don't really have anything else. So if you think of anything later, just put it up in the discussion board and I will answer it over there. All right, I'll see you in the workshop tomorrow, hopefully.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks, Vicky.
Bye.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.